So we're going to try a new feature this week also, guys. So for this one, we're going to review series that we think you should be reading. First up, we're going to review Immortal Hulk. This is the first volume, or is he both? First, we're going to start with issue number 1. Sorry. So we're going to start with issue number 1. I think both of us agreed that we like the story overall. Mm-hmm. The first one starts with Banner at a gas station, and something terrible happens. The girl goes in for a drink, and she accidentally drops a bottle as someone is trying to commit an armed robbery, and the guy freaks out and he accidentally shoots her.
And Bruce Banner.
And the cashier. Mm-hmm. I think the interesting thing to me for all 5 issues was that the people weren't necessarily bad guys, but they were kind of pushed in situations that made them do something outside of what they would normally do.
Right. I would agree. I know you always say a first issue is really important for a new series because it helps get you hooked, and this one especially, as I was telling you, I was only going to read the first issue and end up reading the entire thing because it was so compelling. But and Al Ewing, who writes the book, I hadn't really heard of him, so I wasn't familiar with his work, but he really told a really good story, kind of mirroring, like you said, this person who is he really a bad guy? We find out later he's strapped for cash. He's kind of in debt.
He has a daughter.
Right. He's in debt to this biker gang type, money launderer type guy who's got him kind of hostage, so he's kind of stuck. And then, but it's also mirroring Bruce Banner to where he kind of sees himself am I a bad guy? And then you get the kind of the Hulk's perspective with, I don't care. Yes, you are.
Well, that was the interesting thing to me. It seemed it kind of made you feel bad for him. The guy who. It's going to sound kind of weird. You feel kind of bad for the guy who committed the murders because the biker gang seemed to get off less or easier than what he did.
Right. Yeah. He got some comeuppance that were pretty rough.
For those of you who don't know, this series is a different take on the character. It's more of a horror story than it is a straight up superhero, but it doesn't throw out the stuff that happened before. It kind of incorporates that instead. The Hulk can never die, so that's why it's called the Immortal Hulk. So when Banner dies, it doesn't matter. When the night comes, the Immortal Hulk is resurrected. And the cool thing is, I don't know whether you picked up on it, but there's a quote at the beginning of each one, a historical quote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That kind of encapsulates that issue. So that was pretty much the first issue. Oh, actually there was one more part. So they introduced a character, McGee, which is actually an homage to the 70s character who was following Banner, always trying to track him down. In this one, she's doing this. It's a female version of that type of character. She's following him around the Marvel U, trying to find out, and we find out why that is later in the first graphic novel, in the first collection. That was your favorite issue?
Yeah, I really like the second issue a lot. Built in you always talk about first issues, but for me first issues are useless. Of the second one that just falls flat completely, and I think it did a really good job of taking an already really interesting story and then kicking it up to another level of more of where the Hulk's kind of taking Bruce Banner along, drifting again, kind of like you said, the one characters from kind of the old TV show. To me, even though I hadn't really seen it, and from my understanding, he was kind of drifting along, just whatever, and finding it. In this one, it's kind of similar in that vein, where he says in the beginning of the issue, I don't have money, I don't have clothes, that if I get a shower every once in a while, that's a nice come on, yeah, that's a treat. I'm just going basically wherever the wind takes me, but in this case, it's kind of wherever the Hulk takes me, and where he's kind of for doing his own brand of vigilante justice, and he stumbles upon this small town where people are just kind of dropping dead at grave sites. And
the other interesting thing to me was they seem to hint that he has a spider sense sort of thing, but for
right, but for gamma radiation, which was I would again a new take on the character, and I think that's an interesting concept. And why wouldn't he? He can do everything else with gamma radiation. Why wouldn't he be able to sense it out?
So in this one, they introduce a character named Dr. Fry, and again, he wasn't necessarily a bad guy. His wife dies, and when he has to confront mortality, and he doesn't believe in God or an afterlife, it sounded like.
Right.
It was
he's just a void of nothing, and it terrifies him.
Yeah. So he wanted to live forever, and he knew about the Hulk being immortal. So he tries to create a serum that allows him and his son to benefit from that, which comes back to haunt him in 2 ways. Number one, he loses his son, and then he goes into hiding. But even more than that, people who go to the cemetery, they get infected as well, and they call it the chain of grief in the story. But
right. Because they think it's just accidental. They don't realize it's from the radiation.
But it was a pretty interesting take. I can see why it's your favorite issue. I don't think that issue had the reporter in it though, which kind of like disappointed me a little bit.
I don't think it. Maybe like a tiny like backstory page, but for the most part, it was kind of a secluded issue. But especially the ending is one of the things that really got me. This one almost felt like for me it could have been like its own episode of the Twilight Zone, just thrown into the Marvel, because the Hulk's there. But yeah, I think that's copyrighted. But it felt very good, especially the ending to me was very, like you said, like it's a really good book, but it's not necessarily a lighthearted, happy. Like it had a dark ending, and it was really good. Of kind of like like you said, it's kind of don't you get for what you ask. Like don't ask for something unless you're gonna get it, because he wanted to live forever, and he will. But
the other thing I feel is kind of interesting is each one feels separate, but they are building like a larger narrative. Like they keep talking about the Green Door.
Yes.
Well, you can pick up a single issue and not feel lost at all. Like obviously, the more you read on this one, you're gonna
right. He definitely seems like he's going somewhere with it. He's trying to build an overarching story, which is nice too.
So then we have issue number 3. Which one was issue number 3 again?
That was the one that proved there can be comedy in this still dark story, but where it starts off with the reporter. She's back and she's interviewing 4 separate people about something that happened at a church.
That's right.
And it's interesting because each of the backstory is drawn in a different style, and it's from 4 completely different characters who had different perspectives on the story. Some seeing it as like
the barkeeper was my favorite.
Yes, it was good. I don't know, you didn't like the old lady with the James Dean loving the attacker.
I like that the barkeeper got his comeuppance at the end. Like, I hate that guy.
Everybody gets their comeuppance when Hulk comes to town.
So again, this person's holding a church hostage, but he more wants them to perform like an exorcism on his girlfriend because of this gamma radiation poisoning stuff that's going around. Again, he doesn't necessarily have he's not necessarily a bad person. He's just going about things the wrong way. He feels like he's pushed into a corner and how he has to approach things.
Right.
I don't want to spoil what happens to the barkeeper, but it's definitely a funny.
Yes, there's funny parts of that through all the backstory and different stuff. Which, it's still describing gruesome details, but it is nice how he's able to, and shows again his writing credentials, that he's able to intermix funny into what would on its own be a really like scary, horrible story that happens at a church, but he's able to take a positive spin on it. And again, just the ending of the book, just dark and really good, but just dark and gruesome.
And again, they bring up the Green Door again.
Green Door, yeah.
So. The 4th issue was
the introduction. Well, the last issue ended on the cameo of Sasquatch and his old college roommate, and that was him meeting the reporter and giving a bit of backstory on Bruce Banner, which may or may not be true. We're getting it from this guy's perspective, who, as from the cameo, you can tell, kind of maybe seems like he's got his own self-interest going on of why he wants to find Bruce Banner.
Exactly. There is some cool twists in that one. This video series is gonna have some spoilers. We're gonna try and keep it to where you still want to read it, and there are still some surprises. Mm. There's definitely a twist with Sasquatch, as he was talking about. The character gets awakened in a bad way.
Yes, in a very bad way. In a really terrible place to do it, too.
Yes. Again, like he was saying, it gets kind of gruesome at some points. Sasquatch, I think this one was... It definitely had horror aspects of it. I feel like it wasn't as horrific as
right, no, it was... it was more of just the fear of when he came out, what was going to happen next. But it also had it was the first time that the reporter and Bruce Banner met each other. Yeah. Face to Marvel incognito, hat and jacket. And
you find out why she's looking for him. And,
yes.
And you can understand why she needs this sort of closure. And like I said, I think a cool thing about this is it's not just about the monster. It's about like how he's dealing with all these things, and the people around him deal with like him and their universe.
Right.
I'm really a big fan of the series because I've always been a big fan of the Spectre. For those of you who don't know the Spectre, he's the Wrath of God. He always comes up with ironic twist on how to punish people. This one's not quite ironic, but definitely he's meting out justice
absolutely
in his way. What was the 5th one?
The 5th issue is, I guess, probably the most connected of sort of a part 2 of any in the series. It's directly after Sasquatch's transformation. It's directly then, Hulk can tell he's coming, so Hulk comes out of, Bruce Banner, and then they had pretty much the whole issue is just a knockdown, drag-out fight between Sasquatch and Hulk, and it's and like I said, it's an unfortunate area. So Hulk's trying to get him out of there. Sasquatch, who, like we said, is maybe there's a twist there of what's going on with him. He's got his own thing going on. You get a deeper history of
the character, also.
Absolutely, and it's a Hulk's trying to get into a separate area to fight and try to keep civilians and everything minimal to a degree, and the other guy could care less. But there's also, like we said, there's a twist where for the first time since we've seen Hulk, it seems like somebody might be able to catch him off guard with some information he doesn't have. And again, finally get a little, like this green door they've been hinting, we get a little bit of a, not a complete understanding, but more depth into what exactly that means and what is behind the green door.
And Volume 2 is actually called The Green Door, so we'll go deeper into that one.
That would make sense.
There's a couple things I really like about the series, like very, very much so. So the first issue of Hulk, the original Hulk, first issue, asks, is he a man or is he a monster? And this is really going deeply into that. That's why I said like it's paying homage to like the old series, but not really throwing it away. It's building on top of that. Again, this one's called Or Is He Both? So is he a man or is he a monster or is he both? I think it's pretty cool that they're building on that as well. Mm-hmm. Like I said, paying homage to the 1970s TV series. There's definitely a lot going on in the series. By doing the standalone things, it makes it seem like maybe it's not as deep. It's like maybe but they're definitely like building on each one.
Absolutely.
So even if you don't know the Hulk, I think this is pretty accessible. I think you said that you've never really read the...
Right. I mean, I know from the movies and just from, generic comic backstory, but I didn't have a good understanding. I think it's a really good jumping in point. Again, it definitely has horror elements, so it's has a little bit parts where it's gruesome, but as I said, there's also parts where it's funny. And at the end of the day, it's really good writing, regardless of what your tastes are. I'm not huge into horror comics or that genre, but this still was very compelling.
If you're a little squeamish, it may not be for you, though.
Yeah, that's true. There's the artist does a good job. There's some splash pages with a little bit of gruesome details. But I also liked at the end of this collection, they have a bit of a hodgepodge of events leading up to it, where we talked about how Hulk can't die, but Bruce Banner can. And for a while there, he was kind of experimenting, which it really shows you what kind of place Bruce Banner's at, where he's pretty much like, I'm just done. I don't want to be here anymore. Sort of like...
That actually brings me to a point. I meant to mention that earlier. Me personally, I think you should read the backstory first.
I would agree. I thought that was a little bit, but it wasn't. I will say I was able to get through the 5 issues, not having known it, and they did talk about stuff that that was a tiny bit confusing. Not so that I couldn't get into the story, but it might have been more beneficial if they put the last piece in the beginning, and that you had that kind of the backstory of where there's several different times where Bruce Banner has died or tried to end the Hulk, try to end it, and just realized eventually the horrific truth of, well, I can die, but no matter how many times I die, it keeps bringing me back.
Yeah, and it definitely gets that melancholy feel that even the TV show, like, Bruce is not happy with.
Absolutely. I mean, and the artist does a really good job of every. I mean, I don't think there's a smirk or even a hint of a smile in every picture. Like, he's very downtrodden and very much. It's almost like he's just a vessel and just waiting for. Okay, well, once we find out there's something going on, I know he's going to come out and there's nothing I can do about it.
The interesting thing that I've also found is, like, he doesn't kill anybody. Like, everybody's been kind of left in... They're being punished, but not...
And I think that has to deal with, and he talked about this, is that Hulk, it's not just Hulk smash or just, it's not like an unintelligible monster where he's actually grown intellect. Well, it's just whether it's just been developed over time. Like, he even said he's not 100% sure how it is, but he said, I think... One point in there, he says, I think he might be as smart as me now. And so when Hulk comes out, he goes on long, monologues to these terrible people and kind of tells, instead of just like, I'm going to hurt you, it's like, I'm telling you why you should know what you did and like, you should feel bad about this and everything. So it's definitely a nice add-on to the character, as opposed to where he just came out and couldn't communicate anything except with his fists, but which he still does in plenty of different ways throughout the book.
Almost definitely. So, me personally, I would definitely recommend this one if you're into horror titles and also superheroes. I think that you would really enjoy it. I don't know whether you feel...
Oh, absolutely. I think once the very last page of the 5th issue left me wishing that as soon as I read it, I was flipping it over, like, where's the rest of it? I have to read 6. Like, why is there only 5 issues in here? So it's definitely something where you get into it. I think you're really going to like it, and you're really going to want to keep reading it. I think they're at 17 issues currently
Yes.
right now, and I can see why it's still an ongoing series because it's very well written.
Yes. Well, hopefully you enjoy the series. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's titles that you want us to review in the future. Thank you for watching.